presentation in PDF mode. So hi, I'm Erik Valiquette. I am the CEO of the Blockchain Supply Chain Association. Like I mentioned, I cannot code. Do not ask me the technical questions. I kid you not, but I kid you. So I am the CEO of BSCA. I will tell you what we do at the association a bit. I am the co-chair of the Hyperledger Supply Chain and Trade Finance Special Interest Group. That's a lot of words. So if you are interested in supply chain, come and join the SIG. We have our meetings every couple of weeks, I guess. We have guests. We talk about issues. We try to work on projects, and we have a lot of fun. I am also the current chair of the Canadian Mirror Committee, the TC 307. What's TC 307? That is the group of experts at ISO, the International Standards Organization, that is currently working on blockchain standards. So I represent the bunch of experts behind me that are experts in Canada. So every country gets together, we discuss issues, and we create standards. If you could move on over to the next slide, please. Thank you. So what we do at the association, we do three things. We do some advocacy work. So we talk with policymakers, regulators, governments. I mentioned ISO. And we listen to their priorities, and we bring them the voice of our members to them as well. Again, all around specifically blockchain for supply chain. Second thing we do is my favorite word, collaboration. So we provide resources, we introduce people, we work actively on projects. We're working with a couple of different government departments here in Canada right now. We've helped some farmers in Colombia with one of their projects. So we like to get actively involved. And last but not least, education, because who thinks blockchain is Bitcoin, right? So that's a typical conversation that we hear. We still need a lot of education in my world, which is logistics and supply chain. So I've been in that world for about 30 years. Shipping, logistics, supply chain. We're not the quickest ducks in the pond. We don't adopt new technology very quickly. We've been talking about e-airway bills and e-bills of lading, which is our main document for transportation, for 20 years. We're still using EDI as the most robust technology in supply chain. EDI was invented for the Second World War. That's 70 years old, and that's kind of our cool technology, right? So when blockchain came around, became very interested, realized that we needed a lot of information. So that's what we do around education. So newsletters and webinars and workshops. We created a course with CITT, all around moving the supply chain world forward with this cool technology that we call DLT and blockchain. A bit of our ecosystem. So I mentioned, the policymakers, the government, industry, because they actually do stuff. Universities, other associations, we are their blockchain resource to other supply chain related associations. The logistics world, the airlines, the trucking companies, the steamship lines, trade finance. So it's cool to move your freight around the world, but you actually have to pay for it eventually. So banking, insurance companies, export development associations, you name it. And of course, the really smart people, the technology folks. And not just blockchain, IoT and AI, ML, quantum is coming up in the supply chain world. Edge computing, confidential computing that we've talked at Hyperledger before, right? So we bring all these folks together and we help them understand and adopt DLT and blockchain technology. Next slide, s'il vous plaît. We started off in Canada 2019 because we wanted a nice maple syrup flavored association that represented Canadians. But supply chains are global. So now we have chapters in Canada, US, 2 in South America, 1 in Africa, Europe. India's kind of died away. Australia, New Zealand is coming. Community building, right? Talking about stuff, resolving issues. So, show of hands for the folks that I can actually see, who is from the logistics world and who's from the technology world. So who's from logistics or supply chain? Nobody. Cool. Technology. So everybody's from technology, more or less, right? Technology. All
I'm
right.
from both.
Sorry?
I'm from both.
You're from both. Yay,
yeah.
you're one of the cool kids.
Yeah.
So I've been in logistics for 30 years. I've seen a lot of issues in my world. People on the screen and in the phone and in person, give me examples of supply chain disruptions that you've heard of lately.
COVID.
Ships, right? Ships stuck in canals. Remember that
Sure.
one?
Well, chassis shortage.
Trucks stopped at the ports.
Cruisers left in ports and
Yeah,
basically.
absolutely. I'm hearing trucks stuck at ports because they can't offload the vessel. Or
Uh-oh, lost it.
call me. So vessels stuck in canals, vessels stuck at ports, port strikes, trucking strikes, rail line strikes, rail line floods here in Canada, right in BC, about a year ago, that cut off the big rail line between the West Coast and the East Coast, volcanoes, wars, right?
Freedom convoys.
Freedom convoys, thank you very much. Well, not too much supply chain disruption there, but yeah, disruption. And on, right? We've seen in the world of late supply chain disruptions. It's been in the mainstream media's vocabulary since the pandemic. Hey, there's your bigger supply chain disruption right there, right? Well, I've been living all that stuff for 30 years, right? I've been living the floods and the strikes and all that for 30 years. But the biggest disruption to my industry, to our industry, bigger than all those combined, is actually bad data, bad information, right? We're nodding. Yes, we agree. Bad data is very disruptive. And I'll give you a very oversimplified example. If you can move on to the next screen, please. We all deal with each other in antiquated ways, right? We're sending faxes, we're sending emails with invoices, we're shipping documents in envelopes all around the world so that we can accept the goods off of the vessel and the containers. We deal with a lot of data exchange between companies. As trading partners, we deal a lot of information between ourselves. And we still use very antiquated ways, like I mentioned, EDIs. God forbid people are still using faxes. Who's using faxes? Good. No raised hands. And all that stuff is very expensive, right? Again, like I was going to mention, an oversimplified example. If I'm sending you a shipment, and I always joke and use a shipment of beer. I don't know if you like beer. You like beer? You don't drink beer? Good for you. You shouldn't. Don't start now. So who's drinking beer? Who drinks beer? Yay! There you go. That's drinking beer. So I'm sending you a shipment of beer, right? Or a truckload full of beer. But you forgot to tell me that you've moved your warehouse down the street because you have a nice, big, flashy new warehouse, but you forgot to tell me. There's a direct cost of that, right? Because I have to pay for retrucking, or you have to pay for retrucking, right? Yes. I'm sending a container full of goods overseas. To receive those goods, I need the bill of lading, the official contract between the shipper and the carrier and the consignee, right? If I forget to send you that bill of lading, you will incur storage costs. Or if DHL or FedEx or UPS or whoever loses that envelope, I have to redo a new original bill of lading, sign it in blue ink, and then ship it to you again. It's that simple, and it's very expensive because we're still very paper-based. 90% of the world's goods move by ship. 99% of the bills of lading issued globally are still paper-based. Imagine the opportunities right there. Ta-da! Emerging technologies, yay. What do we mean in our world by emerging technologies? IoT, that's going to collect a lot of information without human intervention, right? Little sensors collecting location, temperature, vibration, humidity, whatever. Blockchain, right? The ledger, the store of the transactions, and AI to kind of make sense of all this new information that we'll be collecting, right? Perfect trifecta for us of automating our supply chains. Couple of next slides are for the non-techie folks. So what's a ledger or what's blockchain? It's a digital ledger, right? Simplest form of a ledger, your bank statement, right? Your bank collects information from a lot of people, from retailers, from the credit card, from you, from Amazon, from a lot of people. They consolidate that information and they give you a statement at the end, right? It's a ledger. Decentralized, centralized, everybody gets. Everybody gets centralized, decentralized. Technical people here, you get it. Next
Yes.
slide. Why is it important? In supply chains, we can deal with dozens and if not hundreds of different partners. Am I going to trust my data to all these people, right? For them to control it centrally? Am I going to trust Canada Customs or US Customs or the FDA or whoever to control my data? I can share some data to them, but will I permit them to control my data? Probably not as an enterprise, right? Blockchain, we all get. Next slide. So no central point of failure, smart contracts. Again, we're paper-based. We need to automate stuff. Audit trails, Thank you. Go. Yeah, that one. No, the other one. The other one.
Go back.
Up.
Yeah.
That's one. Awesome. So, excuse me. This is your traditional oversimplified supply chain, right? So a buyer sends a request to a seller. Seller might or might not be a manufacturer. Sometimes you have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 manufacturers. Think of these phones, right? How many hundreds of different parts that come from all over the world? Think of your automobile, right? All assembled, 30,000 parts on your average car that come from all over the world, finally assembled here in Oshawa and shipped to your dealer, right? So that is your typical supply chain. So manufacturers, 1, 2, 3, sends it to carrier, might be overseas or not, so crosses the ocean, gets to the port, paperwork is given to customs, they put their stamp on it, maybe sent to a big warehouse, and then finally to whoever, right? Consumers or receivers or whoever. Go back. Dozens, if not hundreds, of touch points, each with their own inherent risk, right? Human error of rekeying information, data silos. Each of these parties have their own computer system that doesn't talk to each other, right? All of these parties are kind of waiting for the people before them for information. So the carrier is waiting for the manufacturer to give them the paperwork so that they can retype it in their computer and then move it forward in the supply chain, right? So a lot of reconciliation between all these little data silos. Regulatory compliance requirements, right? The food traceability laws, greenwashing laws that are coming up in Europe, custom stuff, safety stuff, you name it, Transport Canada, wanting to make sure that the certain chemicals are not or are tracked properly to the consumer, et cetera, et cetera. So again, we're still dealing 99.9% of the case in these old-fashioned ways, right? One party to another. Imagine the opportunities. Next slide, please. So in your blockchain supply chain, shared ledger, sharing information pretty much in real time, more or less, right? A lot better than putting a paper in a DHL envelope and shipping it overseas, waiting 2, 3, 4 days for it to come. If it's not lost, then you have to recreate a new one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So, and we all know You people know that from a technical standpoint, you share the information that you want to share with the important people. Do I need to share with customs, for example, that I've paid the seller, the buyer's paid the seller? No, so you don't share that bit, right? So sharing in more real time, trusted information, no data silos, no reconciliation between systems, et cetera, et cetera. This is going to transform, hopefully, our supply chain. Next slide, please. A few examples, which is where the cool stuff happens, right? I'll finish with Walmart using Hyperledger Fabric, Volvo, and a lot of car manufacturers. Who has an electric car in the room here? Nobody has an electric car. I don't either, so don't feel bad. But they're popular, right? A lot of the cobalt and lithium that are coming into these car batteries come from the Congo today. And in the Congo, unfortunately, you have child slave labor issues. Does Volvo or Mercedes or Tesla want child slave labor in their supply chain? Probably not, right? Not good for business, not good for publicity. Yep. So by putting their blockchain, their supply chain on blockchain, they can track stuff, they can certify that it came from that mine, which is child slave labor free. If they're audited by regulators, they can prove it within seconds. Done. Unilever Knorr, little packets of pork soup in Vietnam. They were losing market share to a cheaper competitor that was using cheaper ingredients. But what Knorr did, because this pork soup in Vietnam was super popular, they put QR codes on each packet of soup that the consumer can scan, and they show portions of the supply chain, and they show that the pork came from a certified farm. So they can build consumer trust, right? Walmart, next slide, please. Made in Canada, my favorite example, because I'm from Quebec, I use the accent. Next slide. DLT Labs here in Toronto and in India created a solution for Walmart Canada. Walmart Canada was having a lot of issues with invoice reconciliation. Again, remember that linear supply chain, right? Pick up the goods, deliver the goods. In my world, that's pick up the goods, deliver the goods, send the invoice, problem on the invoice, dispute the invoice, resolve the dispute, pay the invoice. 70% of 500,000 invoices just in Canada alone annually were in dispute. 70% of 500,000 shipments were in dispute. That is a lot of cash flow issue. That is a lot of back and forth email. Hey, what's the problem? This is the issue, blah, 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 right? Back and forth emails. They decided to fix the solution because apparently Walmart was going to be kicked out of their main carrier because too many issues. So they said, let's do something about it. They looked at solutions, blockchain, yay. Walmart globally is a big proponent of blockchain. You probably know Food Trust, right? They were one of the first ones. So they did a study here in Canada. They identified 11 steps to the invoicing process. From pickup of the goods, deliver the goods, send the invoice, dispute, reconciliation, et cetera, right? Next slide, please. So 70% of 500,000 shipments, 6 to 8 weeks over the agreed contract rate, right? So if they pay in net 30 days or net 45 days, they slowed down the invoicing process by 6 to 8 weeks. They actually overpaid their invoices 38% of the time, millions of dollars. And imagine all the back and forth, the time wasted, the teams fixing all this stuff, right? Next slide. By using blockchain based as a solution with IoT in the trucks that would geofence when the truck arrived at the store, say it arrived at 12 noon, left at 12:29 within the contract, approve the invoice. Right, so automation, smart contracts, trusted information between 70 or so trucking companies and Walmart Canada. They were able to reduce the invoicing process from 11 steps down to 5 because they, instead of generating the invoice after the fact, which is very common in our world, they actually generate the invoice when the shipment starts. They can resolve the disputes as the shipment progresses. When it's delivered, it's virtually dispute-free. So that
that's really
brought
smart.
down the dispute from that 70% down to 1.5 more or less percent today. They can onboard a new carrier in about 30 days. So they give them a little API course, talk about their systems, fix some issues. These are the data points, right? So super quick, super efficient. They have apparently saved about $30 million on the project so far, just by kind of rejigging their invoicing process, right? Very cool stuff. They're not happy. They're looking at different projects, in-store deliveries, scheduling, whole bunch of different things. Next slide. I mentioned 70 different trucking companies, 70 levels of IT maturity, 70 potentially different systems, right? Between all these parties. Did everybody have to throw everything out the door? No, right? The ledger is the glue that brought everybody together. Everybody keeps their TMSs, their ERPs, technical folks, I'm sorry, transportation management systems, TMSs, WMS, warehouse management systems. So everybody's keeping their stuff. They're still using EDI in certain circumstances because of the Walmart system. But again, the ledger is gluing everybody together, virtually eliminating all the disputes. This is the part where I say, because again, my world's, when they hear blockchain, they hear Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. I tell them, yeah, no, that's not the case, right? Yeah, you have some Bitcoin stuff, you have some crypto stuff. Some people are using it for enterprise, but this is where the cool kids hang out, right? Enterprise. We've all seen in the news all the crypto bros freaking out these days. We don't talk crypto. We don't involve crypto. We don't get into that world. That's not for us. For us, it's really enterprise blockchain, right? A lot of potential, a lot of folks using it. Pharmaceutical, retail, electronics, food, yeah, banks, credit cards, you name it. And yeah, you have different variants, right, for different people, and that's okay. But enterprise. My second favorite list, Forbes every year publishes a top 50 blockchain companies. Last year, almost 30% of the list of the Forbes top 50 blockchain companies were supply chain related. From traceability of diamonds and foods and cobalt that I mentioned earlier, digital aircraft records. Aircraft parts are resold when they're kind of end of life. All that is paper-based. If you lose the paper, you can't resell it. They put it on electronic, on blockchain, and we're done. Renault, I mentioned 30,000 different parts on an automobile, right? A lot of these parts need to be certified for certain markets. So if Renault is sending it to, I don't know, to France or to Germany or to Italy or to Africa or wherever, right? They need to be certified for all these different markets. Again, paper-based was a pain in the, you finish the sentence with your choice word. Put it on blockchain, and all that is done electronically now. They can trace back for regulators, for certifiers, all their parts within seconds, right? Next slide. Nice Canadian examples. And we have a newly Canadian example that just walked in. DLT Labs, the Walmart solution, also tracing critical minerals for tech, mining giants. Hyperledger tracing gold and ESG. Remember the ESG stuff, right? That's coming popular in the media. Environmental, social governance, right? Tracing your carbon, all that through your supply chain. Very important. It will become very important. Prove It is tracing livestock. And I kid you not when I say sheep facial recognition. They have cameras.
Wow.
Somebody doesn't believe me. Sheep
No, I
facial
believe you.
recognition.
That's really slick.
It is very slick. So they can trace back an animal if there's a disease, right? Instead of like food recall, if there's a
Wow.
recall on certain foods, paper-based was a couple of weeks to trace back what farm it came from, what store it went to. What do you do in the meantime? You pull everything off the shelf, very costly, right?
Oh,
Blockchain, few seconds, right? You don't have to pull everything off. You know, it went from that farm to that store, take that lot off, and you're done. Same for livestock. If there's disease, they can trace back the animal. Dairy Mesh, same beef and dairy. He's even working on cow NFTs.
nice.
Cow NFTs, that's funny. So great examples made in Canada here. You guys do more. You're the technical people. Do more. We need more, right? We need people like the association to tell the industry, hey, this is cool, but you need to build it, right? Et voila, that's it. If you want more information, LinkedIn, we have a YouTube page. We do some stuff regularly, or a YouTube channel, website, email, or in person. Thank you very much.
Wow, good one.
Oh, questions. Yes, questions.
Do they use
Yes.
blockchain supply chain to regulate pricing as well?
Oh, so the question from the audience is, do they use blockchain to regulate pricing? What do you mean by regulate pricing?
Say, for example, a certain product.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So other suppliers might be pricing their potatoes different than the other. So
I don't think that they're using blockchain in that way. Around food, it's a lot around traceability, right? Where you can trace back if something happens, or prove that it's organic, or prove that it's fair trade, or Amazon deforestation free, or all the cool stuff that consumers want now, right? They want better food for themselves typically, and instead of greenwashing, right, that we're getting in Europe, well, now you can prove that it came from a specific farm or a specific field in Colombia, if it's coffee, that kind of thing. Where they can play with pricing, remember the Walmart Canada example, smart contracts, they can not regulate the pricing, but make sure that the contracts are followed. So that's one way that they regulate pricing more or less.
You can also specify pricing in publicly visible.
You have a defined process to convince the industry that there is a need for transition, that there's supply chain into Hyperledger.
If won't be mad at me. And so, repeat the question, please, and then we'll go to Mina.
Do you have a defined process to convince an industry that there's a need to transition their supply chain into Hyperledger as a tech solution?
That's a great question. We all saw a few slides back, Hyperledger and Corda and Ethereum, right? There's solutions for everybody. It depends if you need a public blockchain or private blockchain. Depends if you need Fabric or yeah. Do we have a process? We don't have, well, you have a decision tree that tells you what type of blockchain to use, but the rest is about looking for examples around you, right? So if Walmart is similar to your business model, look at the Hyperledger solution. If Renault, what they're doing is similar to your business model, your business case, your use case, then go with the technology they use, right? Mina. Yes. So Mina is asking, how is blockchain being used in Canada in general? We saw a lot of food. Canada is a big agricultural country, so it kind of makes sense that we'll see a lot of solutions there. But DLT, Walmart Canada, right? Truck invoices has nothing to do with food necessarily. Mining, right? We saw, yeah, tech doing mining, Hyperledger doing gold traceability. So food, mining are the big use cases right now. And slowly but surely, we're seeing stuff in aerospace. I know that the government, different government departments are starting to use it as well. Some to track contracts, not necessarily in supply chain, but track public contracts, right? And public spends. So it's coming along, but you know that it takes time, right? Montreal, Toronto first, right? Big community here. You should be proud of yourselves. Vancouver has a great university, very well renowned, UBC. And then you go probably to Montreal and then the East Coast, the Maritimes. Yes, in the back. Mm-hmm. Great question too, and we get that all the time. Is it just for the big companies out there? No, it's not just for the big companies. Of course, the big companies have the resources and the money, so they'll be the first ones, right? But it's trickling down. Again, we're helping some small farmers in Colombia with a blockchain solution because their fruits are coveted. They're very well known in, I think, Australia and Singapore, and they want to protect their brands. So they're developing that, and we're helping them through that project. So it's trickling down, right? And we have, yes, we have the Walmarts, but we're seeing more solutions. Theory Mesh that I had on screen earlier, food processing or food through the supply chain, not necessarily humongous players, right? So it's coming, but it needs to continue. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So not at least amount
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So was there send I join through? So that means like either in the machine.
Another great question, right? Yeah, I'll repeat the question. So if a supplier of Walmart wants to sell to Costco, for example, right? So if I'm a supplier to Walmart, I'm selling to Walmart, but I want to sell to Costco. Walmart has their blockchain system, their system, right? Costco has their system. Do I need to start all over again? It kind of depends, right? It depends. Is Costco already on blockchain? It depends. Is it the same blockchain, right? That's where interoperability comes into play, right? Eventually, different blockchains will need to talk to each other. It's kind of starting to happen. We're seeing it a bit in Hyperledger as well, right? It depends. It depends on the use case. No easy answer for that one. But if I'm the supplier and I've already done some stuff with Walmart, it's going to be a lot easier when I'm ready to do it with Costco. That's my opinion, right? Did we have anything online questions? Do we have the semi real people online? Do they have any questions?
Yep, I have a question.
Yeah.
What level of digitalization does a company need to have for seamless and manageable blockchain adoption? And from both sides of company, are we talking about achieving measurable changes with the blockchain?
So great questions. I don't know if you heard it, but what level of maturity do you need to have as a company to adopt blockchain? Remember the Walmart 70 different trucking companies, right? 70 levels of of technical maturity. If Walmart is giving them the way forward, then it helps them a bit, right? Yeah, that one. EDI is being used. A web portal is being used. You can upload a spreadsheet and make it work if you want. You can use your mobile phone, right, to send information. Again, it depends. Typically, you need to be cloud-based. That helps a whole lot, but doesn't need to be just that. You can use web browsers to input data from a front-end user experience, but it doesn't need to be just that. Bunch of different solutions, right? I hope that answered your question. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Only when company then they
Mm-hmm. Imagine how I feel. So the question is, as a new developer or an up and coming developer in the blockchain world, right? How do you get started? Yeah, I mean, Hyperledger has a ton of different material. They have courses. You can become a blockchain certified developer, right? In Hyperledger and Linux. Educate yourself, right? Education for sure. Start with a small project. If you have a client, right, that is interested by blockchain, talk with experts. Look at what's being done around you. I mentioned, earlier use cases. So find a use case that's similar, right? Don't throw blockchain at everything, right? We did that in the beginning. Blockchain's going to save the world. We know that's not true. Blockchain has its specific use cases. It works well with certain solutions. When you have a lot of people involved that don't trust each other, that makes sense. If it's a system just to do track and trace within your own company, probably not the right solution, right? So look at examples done around you, education, and talk to people like us, and we'll tell you, do blockchain. Well, great question. I wish I had your talent. Again, I can't code, right? So you have a step in front of me in creating the cool stuff. Any other questions? Online, virtual people? I think we're done. Oh, Hyperledger question.
Okay, I guess the question was, is that in your supply chain example, how does a carrier who's mobile and not connected to the blockchain to participate? Can you go back to that? Can you go back to the presentation?
So thank you, by the way.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. We're not going to introduce you. Okay. We'll go back to 18. No, go down to the last one. The last one. No, but no. Okay, so that question, it really depends on the architectural design of how you're going to set it up. So for example, if you have, because obviously even for this example, a pharmacy is crucial, right? Even sometimes you have a patient. So in that situation, there's different ways that you can actually put them in. So one part is actually you can put into the smart contract. When it's in the smart contract, it can either, you can either have it enter through the blockchain, you can have the network system and have their own interface where you have the transportation company feeding the data in. Or what you can have is that if that company is actually connected to the ERP system here or other here, that can be connected into to the smart contract. The other way is that if there's APIs, third party APIs, that you don't really go back. Yeah. Yeah. In that situation, if it's a third party API, you don't really need it to come in either through this interface or through one of the client applications. It could be directly through the smart contracts, because within the smart contracts, you're going to embed the APIs. For example, if you're going to have location, what you're going to do is you're going to use the Google location APIs, right? And you're going to put that into the smart contract. So that's going to be pretty much through the APIs through the third parties, such as Google and so forth, that will complete that transaction. So in that situation, you wouldn't need it. But as I said, there's different ways of doing it, of how you want to pretty much create that. So it really depends on the architectural design and what's the best in that situation. Is that all the questions for that one? Okay, cool. All right, cool. Erik, we really appreciate you coming out here, and here you can come on camera right here, and then so if you guys have any questions, you guys can obviously go to put up his information there.
We have
Go ahead.
Last question right here.
Is it true? So, like, for the supply chain to be public, so do we need the role of the government?
So do we need government to trust our supply chains, right? Do we need a certification somehow to say yes, proven, right? It certainly helps. That young lady right there uses laboratories to prove her information, because yeah, you can put garbage in, right? Nothing is going to keep you from putting garbage in. So yes, it certainly helps. Do we need government? Not necessarily government, right? But people who can certify your information goes a long way. Right, so laboratories, you have inspection companies globally that have been doing business for decades. People like SGS that go in and check that you're really shipping what you're saying you're shipping, right? Government might help for sure. Certain policies might help, but you don't need just government to ensure what you're putting online or in your systems is accurate or true, right? From a technical perspective, yeah, but if I decide to do something bad, I have my verified credentials, but I put in bad information anyway, counterfeit goods I ship, but I say they're real, right? Technology goes a certain way. You have people putting chemical markers in bunker fuel. So these big container ships, right? They use diesel bunker fuel, and to make sure that the fuel that they're selling or they're buying is the right grade or the right whatever, right? They can put DNA markers in that. So yes, science-based tools to back up what you're saying on blockchain. Blockchain's not going to fix that portion if you decide to.
So somebody's saying that you need governance, but not necessarily
Government.
Yeah.
Great comment, right? Good rules and not necessarily a law, I guess, right? Not necessarily. Is there a central policymaker or a central verifier? again, it depends on your supply chain. You have people that go into factories in Asia to make sure that human rights are respected, right? So then that place is certified, and then they audit from time to time and they back it up, right? Does that mean that next Tuesday, when the inspector's not there, right, something happens? Yeah, right. Yeah, it happens in Canada, so you know.
So what happens after part of the system?
Yeah.
Whatever APIs that they have for the program, that's the position. And so what happens once they get the new call, which is integrated into the smart contract, then it fulfills all the credentials of the smart contract. So that's what you're asking. That's how the governments could get involved from the technical side of it.
So a third-party inspector being part of the smart contract for those who couldn't hear. Yes, you may.
Thanks. I should say for a person there should be a goal to identify. So if you are a technical provider, and I should say, like, as a technical provider, you are not responsible for all of these true and false, points, saying, okay, if this apple is really from Peru or from any other country, because you're just making sure that your technology works well. But then this is the responsibility of that consortium and the founder of that business to say, okay, to make sure from the business point of view that that problem is happening or no. Because I'm facing this question a lot in my journey, and sometimes, and so many times I'm saying, okay, it's not our responsibility. We're just making sure everything works and trying to integrate as much as information as we can.
So it's more about the supply chain people like me to make sure that, their supply chain is above board.
What you have to do with sort of an ICO, sort of setting an international standard
Mhm.
should make up credible supply chain components, I would say.
That's one aspect. Yeah. I mean, you have standards, right, for products and processes. Yeah, you have verifiers, a ton of different options for people who want to be above board. Those who don't want to be, well,
Like it's already done. Right?
you can do whatever without blockchain, right? You can use EDI, you can use faxes, you can use whatever. You can use EDI electronics, you can use APIs, which is that step above. Without blockchain, blockchain has its advantages, right? Because an API is still kind of a one-to-one relationship, right? So blockchain's kind of the many-to-many, or so, and it's easier to implement when you have these more complex solutions instead of piecemealing to different technologies. But you guys know that more, guys and girls. Sorry.
So the other question is, who should be the governance? How do you think SDO, standard development organizations, are needed to participate to speed adoption?
So who sets governance? Again, that's a loaded question, right? It depends on the solution. Walmart Canada, in that example, was kind of the decision maker and all that. They developed the solution. They said trucking companies use this. Trade Lens, right? I don't know if people who were following the Trade Lens story, that one of the first big shipping solutions out there that closed down back in, I think, in December. Apparently that was bad governance. I'm coming. They had a business model that didn't work in the long term, right? So for me, that's governance. So people who create these solutions and try to fix these problems need to make sure that solutions are clear, that you're involving your partners, that you're involving, that you understand your business flows. Change management's hard for us humans sometimes, so make sure that you do your homework first.
There's also a suggestion about member-driven, member-led, and so forth.
It can be, right? It depends on the solution. So again, thank you. And are we closing? We're closing. So bye-bye, folks. Thank you again.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for dialing in.
Thank you.
Thanks for putting this on.
Bye-bye. Good event. Thank you.
Thank you.